So, welcome at the Dirijorul Enescu Festival, and for the very first time?
Yes, the orchestra was here 2 or 3 years ago, and but was then without me, and now I'm very happy to be here as well with Magdalena Cojena and the VBO, and so they are all happy as well to be back in Romania and to be back in this beautiful theatre and concert hall.
Are almost 20 years since you gave birth to your orchestra, I suppose.
It's
isn't
actually exactly 20 years, yes. It was August 97 was our first concert in Venice, in the Scuola Grande di San Rocco, under the beautiful paintings of Tintoretto. This was the beginning of this long journey. And when we started, we didn't thought about such a prosperous future. And it was after this concert that we played music by Alessandro Marcello. The whole program was of unpublished and unknown music of Alessandro Marcello, one of the many Venetian musicians. And after the concert was the wish of every player that we should follow on with this project of playing together. The first concert was still not with the name of the Venice Baroque Orchestra, but then actually never mind. I mean, this was August 97 was the first meeting of those people which still play together. Many of the players are still in the orchestra.
But how did you find them?
They called me to conduct this concert in August, and this was a little ensemble, was a core of 8 musicians from Venice, which they regularly played 2 or 3 times every week in San Rocco, in this beautiful, it's not a church, it's the Scuola Grande di San Rocco, which is really beside the church of San Rocco. And for them, they did not have in mind to build up an orchestra. But then after this concert I conducted was actually with many more players. So we had really a real Baroque orchestra. And that was not easy to find because at that time in Italy, we didn't have so many musicians interested in Baroque music. For example, in the conservatory, was not so common to study Baroque violin or Baroque cello or lute. And now, after all, maybe the work, I would say, of the many Italian ensemble, early music ensemble, it's really possible to study in the conservatory also early music. And so when we started, there were many players coming all over Italy, and the core group was, of course, from Venice, but with a lot of help also from other cities, sometimes also from other countries. And little by little, the new generation grew up, I think also thanks to our work. And so now all the players are literally all living around Venice, and they're all from the Veneto region. I mean, this is not a particular, I just want to say that because 20 years ago this was not possible, and the early music in Italy was very neglected. There has been a process, you know, in Italy, was maybe the last, I don't know how it is the situation in Romania, but Italy and South Europe was really the last country to start to be interested in Baroque instruments, in the what we call philological way of thinking of music, which is nobody thinks to have the truth. I don't think I have the truth. I cannot say Handel was doing what I'm doing now with VBO. But I think I try to be as much as possible in this context and in this aesthetic, and to express myself in this aesthetic. This is the nice things of being musicians. But I don't like to make something completely out of style, where I really know this would not be the style of Vivaldi, the style of Handel, the style of Bach. this is, you know, the first nation to be interested in this way of thinking in musical context, in the conservatory, in the schools. That was England and Holland. They were the two countries where already 50 years ago, first festival of early music festival started. And Italy, because maybe Italy is still the country, unfortunately, I must say, of opera, of Verdi and Puccini, which is wonderful, of course. But maybe this is why we have to pay the price that Monteverdi, what is Monteverdi against Puccini? Is not Monteverdi exactly as big, exactly as important for music history? Is even much more important than Puccini and much more important for Verdi. Without Monteverdi, we would have not had
it's
opera.
The basic.
Yes, and but for Italian, if you would ask even politics, you know, culture, you ask who is Claudio Monteverdi? They would say is maybe the label of a cheese coming from Cremona or the Lombardia region. I'm sure they don't know anything about Monteverdi. They would say some words about Verdi and about Puccini. They would not be able at all to talk about Monteverdi, about Cavalli, about Jacopo Peri, about Gesualdo da Venosa, and this old stuff from, you know, when the Baroque aesthetic and Baroque music started in Italy at the beginning of the 17th century, so around 1600. There started the first country in the world, of course, also in paintings. There is this changement in the aesthetic where already in 1600, and you can see in paintings a little bit earlier, but in music, let's say around 1600, that the musician starts to write not music, not only in terms to be correct, but they want to express something. They want to move the listeners. And this is something completely new. That was Italy, and Italian musician like Claudio Monteverdi, as I said, and then the idea of the monodic lines, so not too many voices, just to keep it maybe even a little bit simpler in the harmony, so that the voice can express itself in the best way to communicate the different affetti. Is a key word for this music, for the Baroque music. When we started, it was still a little bit neglected, this music. And it's still, you know, in Italy it's very rare to listen to a Bach Passion or Bach B minor mass, or operas of Handel, operas Vivaldi. It's very rare. It's not at all, still not in our music culture, you know, that we say Baroque music has the same dignity as the Romantic, and this is still, in Italy, still not like that. And it will be, we have to be patient a little bit more, but it will come, for sure.
But in the same time, the past, through Baroque music, is in our days.
Absolutely.
Because the ancient music, it is an actual music. Because this kind of affetti needs the world today.
Absolutely. And I have this experience by doing mainly Baroque music, and I did also, of course, many operas and sacred works. But always I have this feeling with the public that they all say, this music, it sounds much more actual, much more music for today than the romantic music, because they feel now the romantic music sometimes too heavy and too opulent. Yeah? And the Baroque music, it has something in itself which speaks also to the youth and to the young generation much more directly than a Wagner opera, you know. And they can feel much more close to the world of Handel, for example, than to the world of Wagner, if I'm allowed to make a comparison of something which is completely different, like two worlds. But it's true what you're saying. Also, the Baroque music has something in itself because of the basso continuo. It has a lot which is in common with jazz also, because you have a lot of, what I'm playing is completely improvised, and I cannot be sure that every evening is the same, since it's an improvisation. I only have one line and some numbers, and I have to improvise. For this concert now we don't have the tiorba or the lute, but normally the basso continuo band, they always improvise. And so this fact that you have also to improvise something which is not written, make this music also incredibly fresh. And this feeling you would never have if you play music of the late romantic times, let's say, once again, Wagner or Puccini or Verdi, because you just play what is written, and you are not allowed to change one note. In the Baroque music, it's not that you are not allowed, you must change. You are not allowed to play what is written, in one sense. What is written is the bass. You should not manipulate too much. This is obvious. But you have to create, this is, let's say, the bass, and then on this bass, which is a written paper, you create something. And this is also the same with singers. So every singer should feel this freedom, and only then we are creating the music in the moment we are playing.
Why did you choose Handel?
But we did a long, I think like something like 10 years ago, a CD, a wonderful CD with Magdalena. And years ago we did a lot of Handel. And now it was nice to come back to Handel, was a desire of Magdalena, because she loves as well very much Handel. And that's why spontaneously was this idea of proposing Handel recital with arias and concerti grossi.
This kind of music needs a special concert hall, I suppose. Not too big and a little bit smaller and with a great acoustic.
Absolutely. You are perfectly right. You know, the acoustic, if it is too dry, for Baroque music is really, it destroys completely the music. You should have a little bit of nice positive resonance, a reflection of sound, because this creates a kind of aura which belongs to this music. The sound doesn't stop when you stop singing or when you stop bowing, but there is always a little bit of reverberation in good sense. This is essential. Of course, if you play sacred music in a church, this is also part of the music, the church acoustic. And then Catholic music needs normally much more acoustic. Bach needs a much drier acoustic. And you see that also from the music of Bach, because music of Bach for the harmony is always very complicated. And for sure, Bach churches were much more dry. And normally in the Protestant church are much drier also because the center of the liturgy was the predica, the predica. So you should have the words were essential. In the Catholic, what was essential was really the liturgy, the music, and was not so important to listen to every words. And I can see that also inside sacred music, how much the acoustic is part of the music itself, according what kind of music we are playing.
diremo sul naso, con la voce del mio stegno, lo vestito, con la voce del mio stegno vestito, o spirtirei. Con la voce del mio stegno, mi mostreremo sull'aria, io vestito, o spirtirei, o spirtirei.
What kind of music do you like?
I like basically everything. I'm doing mainly now Baroque music only because I'm also harpsichord player and also organist. And I started when I was very, very young to be interested in old instruments. So I loved, since ever, Bach a lot, of course, as a harpsichord and organ player. So this is one of the main reasons, but maybe you would be surprised. I really love as well so much romantic music, and I'm completely in love with Mahler, Gustav Mahler, since ever, and Bruckner and Wagner. I do have some problems with Wagner, I have to admit. I love Parsifal a lot, and other operas much less. But anyway, I really love all music. I'm always interested on even listening jazz or folk music. For example, I work a lot also in Spain, in Andalusia, in Granada. I'm completely in love also with the flamenco and all their popular songs and tonadillas and what they all improvise. And so anything which has sounds make me, since ever, take my curiosity. And I'm not at all closed in only in my early music world. But they asked me to do mainly this, and I love this music, and I love anything in art.
You are traveling a lot, you are working a lot. Do you have time for yourself, for reading, for instance, for family?
Look, the same family was essential, and for me, I have two daughters, which now they are already 29 and 28.
Musicians also?
They did study, but now one daughter is criminologist, and the other one is philosophy, studied master in philosophy. But what a musician, what I can speak only for myself. As soon as I'm in a new city now, Bucharest, I arrived yesterday. I was never in Bucharest. Yesterday, I went in the hotel, and after 20 minutes, I was already in the museum. So this is something I do always to keep me always interested and alive. I discovered something very beautiful at the museum, this Orazio Gentileschi, which I didn't know before, and there is this fantastic portrait of Farinelli here in Bucharest. I didn't know at all it was here. This huge painting of Farinelli, beautiful. And this is something I always do everywhere I am. Even I visit the same museum even more times. And I like to read about the history. And this is something which goes really very close together with the activity, being a musician and traveling so much. It's something I do always. And then the rest, of course, I am also teaching in Basel. And of course, family, as I said, I try to find the time as well for the family, normally in summer. And sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes they come to visit me if I'm many weeks away. And yeah, being a musician is not always easy because you must like to travel. You must you must be curious. I mean, if I wouldn't be curious, I would just stay in the hotel every time waiting the concert, you know. This would never work with a profession like that, because you would be completely annoyed, and after the first 6 months of work, you would say immediately, this is not for me, because you would not be happy. But if you are traveling and you are happy to know new cultures and to learn new languages and to learn new things all the time, this keep you alive and keep you very excited of the life you're doing.
You said that you are teaching in Basel.
Yes.
How is the new generation with the early music? How is receiving this message, let us say?
I think if I have to talk about Basel, Basel is more or less the center in the world for early music, because the Schola Cantorum Basiliensis is nearly 80, I don't remember exactly, but it's more than 80 years that it was founded. It's maybe almost 90 now. And the first institution in the world to start it, you know, it was at that time, so long ago, was about what is the viola da gamba, what is a cornetto, what is all instruments that were not played. You know, a violin doesn't look so much different. A Baroque violin, for somebody which is not, let's say, expert, looks the same. In fact, it's not the same, because you have the gut strings, you have bow, completely different, and the ponticello is much lower, and the instrument has to be played in a different way, but it looks the same. But viola da gamba, nobody played viola da gamba, or cornetto. There was instruments which were completely forgotten. And so this school helped to discover again those instruments and to discover also the techniques you need to play those instruments. So in Basel, the interest is very, very high. Then I know well the situation in other countries as well. And I can say that it's growing up little by little. Now I will be working, for example, in Russia. I will be at the Bolshoi next month doing Alcina of Handel. And for example, that Bolshoi Theater in Moscow is doing Handel opera. This is something incredible. I mean,
Providence is working.
No, but I'm saying that, you know, also the main institutions like Teatro La Scala, Bolshoi,
which have another
repertoire, and they have their own orchestra, and you would say, okay, they will
a certain sound.
They will never be interested to do Baroque opera. No, I think now the public want also to listen to this music in those houses which are the opera houses of today, you know. And in fact, also Milano Scala, they are doing next month, I think, Tamerlano or they did already Ariodante, and now Alcina in Moscow. And in many of the German theater, this is already since the last 15 years very normal. But you know, in opera theaters, opera started with Mozart. Anything before Mozart they were not interested. So now also the repertoire, thanks to the early music movement and all the ensembles, made it also possible that all this opera repertoire between 1600 and 1770, 170 years of opera, is also came up, you know, again. And this is thanks to all the work has been done in the last 20, 30 years.
So they are going back to the roots, let us say.
Because yes, you know, it's not only the interested that the musician are interested on playing harpsichord, baroque violin, viola da gamba. I think even more exciting is that the public is interested and want to listen this music. This makes it even more exciting.
The majority of opera singers are they are studying the classic way of singing.
Yeah, this is exactly the same like for the musicians playing in the orchestra. If there is a modern orchestra which always played very heavily romantic stuff and Wagner or Puccini, then it's really difficult to ask them to play an opera by Handel. Or even worse, an opera by Monteverdi. They really don't know the style. They have completely different way of playing. Singers, the same. But now, thanks to the work which has been done, also thanks to singers, really, like Cecilia Bartoli, like Magdalena Kozhena, like other singers, they, with them, is clear that it's also possible that you can sing Norma well, and you can also sing well Handel and Vivaldi in case of Cecilia, for example, or Magdalena. I know she sang Carmen, and how can you sing Carmen and you sing Monteverdi or Handel? Is it possible? Yes, it is possible, because finally it's a question of how much intelligent you are. Thanks to those soloists and thanks to many, many other musicians and conductors, or I'm thinking really Gardiner, Simon Rattle, Harnoncourt, thoughtful people, that they understand that the aesthetic is so important. One thing is the music itself. You must have the same love of whatever music you play. But this is not enough. You must also recognize the styles. When I was a kid, I was always so angry with myself because I could never recognize, if I was listening on radio, the violin concerto of Brahms or Beethoven. I could not immediately recognize, why? Because Beethoven often is played like Brahms. And then if you start listening on radio Beethoven, and for one moment, if you play in a very romantic way, I was always, for the first minutes, confused. So, is that I should be Brahms? No, it was Beethoven. Or what I'm saying is that interpret should really know that if you are playing Mozart, Mozart is Mozart, and Mozart is not Beethoven, and Beethoven is not Chopin, and Chopin is not Liszt. And this is the richness of being musician. And, it's like to walk in a museum, and even if this sounds a little bit dry, but it's like you see Italian paintings, and you recognize from 17th century, then you recognize then Italian painting of the 18th, then you recognize the Flemish school, and then you recognize the Spanish school of the different, these differentiations in the paintings you have. You know, many peoples are able to see that. You don't need to be a professor for art. It's really a question of training your eyes and being a little bit awake with your... The same is music. Why should be music different? The sound we are creating is finally like paintings. So if we want a Baroque articulation and Baroque contrast, we have to use that in the right context. If we are playing romantic music, we should look for something completely different. And then it's also completely different according to which author you are, which interpretation you are doing. Are you playing Wagner, or are you playing Bruckner, or are you playing Beethoven Eroica, which was written in 1805? The Eroica, I mean, the Eroica is normally played like a Wagner piece, you know. And this is, for me, essential. This also keeps me awake, because I'm always asking myself so many questions about interpretation. This curiosity is essential. Dopo notte, this last piece of the program. This is a piece which comes in the opera of Ariodante. It's a crucial moment before everybody thought Ariodante committed suicide, the beginning of the second act, because he sees Ginevra making love with Polinesso, and he feels completely destroyed. But it was not the real Ginevra. But this whole complotto, this was done exactly for this reason by Polinesso, hoping that Ariodante, which was such a good guy, would kill himself or would go away from Ginevra. And in fact, he did it, but he was not successful in this suicide. When he comes back at the beginning of the third act, he realized all this complotto. He realized that there was not the real Ginevra, but was another woman dressed as Ginevra. And then when the whole intrigue is gone, he sings this Dopo notte. This Dopo notte is a very difficult coloratura aria, but it's the most uplifting, one of the most uplifting arias that you could ever listen. the aria after the disaster, and it says, dopo notte atra e funesta. After such a dreadful night, he was in this dreadful night, I can talk again about joy and about how beautiful is the life and so on. And anybody playing this piece or listening this piece, I know because I did Ariodante so many times, also with different people, and I saw different public, they are all smiling. Every time this aria, they are all. So this aria for me has something, it is like drops against depression. If I would be a doctor, holistic doctor, or maybe I would be even not holistic, but I would say instead of taking certain tablets, I would say to my patients, I say, look, you listen dopo notte, you take dopo notte at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then at 12 o'clock, and then before you go to sleep as well, a treatment of 10 days. And then after the 10 days, only morning and lunch, not in the evening, otherwise you would not sleep because it would be too much awake of joy. This is the power of music. And Baroque music especially has this power. Because, as we said at the beginning, is the music of the affetti.
Mentioned about museums and paintings. How it looks portrait of Andrea Marcon?
This I don't know, because maybe that would be a good question for the musician of the orchestra, of a good question for the soloist with whom I like to work, or good question for my students.
Or a self-portrait.
But I just love music, and I love to share music. This maybe is part of, maybe that could be a good word. If I'm thinking now while you ask, but I can never impose myself. So I'm not a good conductor, in other terms, because I like to share, and I like to find a dialogue, and sometimes I like to ask also, but what do you think, what would you, and in today to do like that, you are already, that is a sign that you are not a good conductor, because a good conductor should always impose himself. This I never like it.
But as a human being?
Yes, that's why I like to find this humanity also in making music. And so for me, it's really sharing. And when it's not, so I want that everybody from the orchestra is with me. So I have to embrace all of them, but they are also embracing everybody else on stage, and the soloists especially. So music is more or less, when you making music is a love action, in good terms. It's pure love, because this is always the goal. For 2 hours, you have to forget everything, and you have to enjoy this moment where we are all seated on a beautiful table, and we are all eating together. We are eating music together. But this to share, when you have a nice moment with friends or with family, where you eat and drink all together, this feeling of joy and serenity, you really feel serene with yourself, because you are happy with your embrace of love of the friends. And making music is the same.